We should probably do some sort of introduction. Like, hi, everybody. I'm Patricia.
I'm Lee.
And we're weird as fuck.
Yeah, I suppose you probably should, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Because someday we might be famous. Okay. So.
We are late, by the way, but we're on vacation, so we had things to do.
Well, in our defense, not only are we on vacation, but the entire West Coast is on fire. I mean, let's be fair. I couldn't record for over a week because I couldn't stop coughing.
Yeah, we were actually ahead a few shows, but thanks to the smoke, we couldn't do anything that whole week because it was just so bad out. It was nasty.
Well, even inside the house, I couldn't stop coughing.
Yeah, it was bad.
It wasn't coronavirus, I promise. Maybe next time. Okay, so are you ready to be shocked and amazed?
Yes, I am.
I don't know about shocked and amazed, but interested.
Shock me, baby.
Don't tempt me. We did just finish watching Dracula, and there was that awesome episode with the giant game of Doctor. Oh, what the hell was that name? Operation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was funnier than shit.
That was funnier than shit.
They got shock collared every time that they touched the sides of it, just like the game, except it shock collared you instead, and they deliberately made it where you would get shocked.
Well, yeah.
A lot.
It's no fun if you come out unscathed. Dracula. Incredibly fun. Watch it. Anyway, we are not being sponsored by Dracula, but if they'd like to.
And Dodgeball. That's funnier than shit, too.
Oh, Dodgeball Thunderdome.
We just started watching that. It's funny.
Well, they just started showing it.
Ping! Off to everybody's head. It's funny.
So many middle school memories coming back to me. There's a reason why schools have outlawed that game.
Yep.
But they didn't tune in to listen to us laugh about how people get tortured on TV. They want to hear about weird shit. Although drag queens getting shocked in dog collars was pretty weird. So,
yes, it was.
If you're into that sort of thing, yeah, it was hilarious. Okay. So today I'm going to tell you about another fascinating device. Not a shock collar on a drag queen, but imagine a device that allows you to see and hear past and future events.
That could make you a lot of money.
It could make you a lot of money. It could potentially clarify misconceptions from history. Although history is...
totally fucked anyway.
Well, when we watch movies about historical events, we see it from the filmmaker's viewpoint. We see what they want us to see. It's a very linear path to a conclusion. Even when we look at World War II and the rise of the Nazis, we see a very linear path. But if you were living in that time, it's not quite so clear-cut. So clarifying events from history would be a lot more difficult than it probably sounds. But it would allow you to tune into things that weren't necessarily televised or maybe happened too long ago to be televised, so that you could see things as they actually happened, as opposed to how the historians recorded them according to their own personal beliefs and their preferences.
Yeah, things got changed a lot over time.
Well, history is written by the winners.
And then the schools, I mean, half of it is just a bunch of shit that...
Well, it's very much whitewashed.
Filtered out.
American history especially is very Eurocentric. For example, when you and I were talking about... America's having a standard language. No, we don't. You also didn't know that the majority of people in America have always spoken Spanish. They didn't tell us that in school. They didn't tell us of a lot of things in school because it didn't fit the pattern that those that designed our curriculums wanted us to see as far as history. They wanted to see a very English, very Dutch version of how America was, quote unquote, settled, and their version of westward expansion. But it was messy, it was ugly, it was bloody, and it was brown. But that's getting us off I could talk all day. That's taking us off the topic. What I want to tell you about today is a device that would actually allow you to see these events and hear them as they actually happened, not by actors, but by the people who actually lived the events. And according to certain scientists, not only did it exist, but it worked. Today I'm going to tell you about the Chronovisor.
That's a weird name.
It came from the 1950s, so it fits right into the timeline. So the device that I just described was the premise behind a project that Father Pelligrino Ernetti, I can't read my own handwriting, Ernetti, Ernetti, claims to have been part of back in the 1950s. And this is the claim made by Father Francois Brune in a 2002 book that he wrote called Le Nouveau Mystère du Vatican. So, the New Mysteries of the Vatican. At least I hope. At least I hope that's how that translates. My French is a little rusty. In his book, Brune claims that he met Father Ernetti in the 1960s, and after a day spent on a boat chatting about biblical interpretations of lost texts, Dr. Ernetti turned to him and said, and I'm paraphrasing, "Why speculate over interpretations when you can see the events as they unfolded?" To which Father Brune went, "Hey?"
So you got a plan there, bud?
Yeah. "What for do you mean, sir?" In that breathless meeting, Father Ernetti told Father Brune about a device that he and 12 other scientists, in a group of renowned scientists, including Werner von Braun and Enrico Fermi, that had fashioned to do just that. The device, which they called the Chronovisor, allowed them to see the events of their choosing, both seeing and hearing what happened in a given place on any day in history. Brune was, of course, astounded. The idea that a man could see history unfold was remarkable, to say the least. He had no reason to doubt Father Ernetti, but if such a thing were true, wouldn't we have heard of it?
Yeah, you would think, but then the government takes over and takes it and hides it and keeps everybody from using it.
Well, in this case, it wasn't the government. It was the Catholic Church.
Even worse.
Well, the government can't keep a secret.
They're good at hiding stuff for a while.
The church is pretty darn good at keeping secrets. In 1972, a magazine called La Domenica del Corriere, an Italian magazine, Corriere? I'm not sure. My Italian is non-existent. They published an article that was entitled, "A Machine That Photographs the Past Has Finally Been Invented." And it wasn't satire. It wasn't a spoof. It was a very earnest article about a machine that was designed by these scientists and that was capable of doing exactly what Father Ernetti said it could do. It was sensational. In the article, the magazine attempts to describe the device. They stated that it was replete with precious alloys, cathodes, dials, and levers, and that it possessed the ability to show historic events in biblical and Roman history. According to Father Ernetti, the machine was able to accomplish this by decoding and reproducing the electromagnetic radiation of a signature of a... Let me try that again. Decoding and reproducing the electromagnetic radiation signature of an event. How they knew what that signature was and how they were able to track it, he doesn't say. While the design sounds like a work of science fiction, Father Ernetti claimed that he had proof. He produced a photo of Jesus at the crucifixion and the text of a lost play, Thyestes, written by the legendary poet Quintus Ennius, which Ernetti claims to have transcribed after a viewing of the play's performance by way of the Chronovisor. It was an extraordinary claim. The idea that he had witnessed those events and brought back proof that it actually happened and was able to reproduce it for the magazine article and for curious minds. So Brune wrote extensively about the Chronovisor, but it's important to point out that he never actually saw the device for himself. According to Father Ernetti, the Vatican took the device and dismantled it because they feared that it would fall into evil hands, that the wrong kind of people would take it and use it to manipulate future events. Now, it allows you to see past events, but you can't actually do anything about it. You're a passive viewer. But if you know what's going to happen in the future, you could potentially change that event before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And the Vatican determined that this was not something that they were willing to allow to roam free.
Oh, God. And yeah, that they would be able to do all kinds of shit.
Well, you could also argue that the Vatican wouldn't want somebody to use it and see the truth about facts from the past either.
Yeah, that's for sure.
There's a story of a pope whose name escapes me at the moment, but apparently he was a she, and she was pregnant and gave birth in front of witnesses. Imagine if you could tune in and verify that actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the Pope's cassocks, vestments rather, you would be able to hide a pregnancy fairly successfully. And then apparently this Pope collapsed in the middle of a kind of a processional moment. So there were loads of people around and saw her miraculously spew forth a human.
So she looking like a man.
Well, maybe from the neck up.
Yeah.
But, so there's that argument for why the Vatican would really want to lock away a device like that. And it's fantastical. I mean, to me, it would explain a lot of how the Vatican's been able to anticipate and sort of get ahead of certain problems. Why they weren't necessarily terribly worried about the sex scandal and the child molestation scandals of the 90s and 2000s. They didn't freak out because they knew what to do. They knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, but they should be able to stop it from happening if they knew it was going to happen.
Or maybe they allowed it to happen because it distracted you from something that would have been much worse.
Or if there's so many kids that there was just no way to stop it because they molested so many kids. It just would have to happen eventually.
And, potentially they could prevent it from being even worse. But anyway, before anybody thinks that we're bashing on the Catholic Church, I have nothing particularly against Catholics. Most priests are very good people. I just have a problem with organizations in general. But anywho, so the Vatican has the device and has dismantled it, according to Father Ernetti. But while these claims are fantastic, and if the device exists, extraordinary, there are a certain number of reasons to believe that it's all science fiction.
Yeah, if they had that kind of power, they wouldn't dismantle it.
Well, just because they have it and they say they've dismantled it doesn't mean they've dismantled it.
Oh, no.
They've just hidden it away from public use.
Mm-hmm.
So Father Ernetti believes that it was dismantled. It wouldn't be the first time that a major organization lied to one of the peons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here are the reasons why people have a problem with this potential device existing. So the father produced a photo of Jesus at the crucifixion. I can't talk. English is hard. Unfortunately, the photo is a mirror image of a wood carving by the artist Lorenzo Valera. And the father did actually admit that the photo was fake. He says that he saw it. He swears that it was true, that it happened, but the photograph that he took wasn't actually the photo of Jesus that he purported it to be. And he admitted that.
So they're already lying about it.
No.
No, they
No.
won't die.
The second reason, too. The only two scientists mentioned in the study of the chronovisor, Fermi and von Braun, were both household names and hugely well known all around the world. Enrico Fermi was a Nobel Prize-winning scientist who studied electromagnetics, and among other things. So, in fact, I will quote to you what he won the Nobel Prize for: the discovery of nuclear reactions brought about by slow neutrons. So everybody knows who Fermi was, especially in the 50s and 60s. It was, very close to when he actually won the prize. He was a household name. It's worth noting that a device like this would be within his realm of study. So that makes it believable. Werner von Braun, obviously a rocket scientist who was responsible for getting NASA scientists to the moon. Also a Nazi. I think it's very important to keep that in mind.
That all these people would want to be known for what they invented. They would not want to shove it under a rug and not have people know what geniuses they are. I couldn't see any of those just not talking about it.
Well, and that's the thing. Ernetti said that the scientists that worked on the project were sworn to secrecy. The two household names that he did mention were conveniently dead when he talked about them, so they weren't there to refute his claims. But we're also worth noting that von Braun, along with his contributions to the advancement of rocketry, worked on the Nazi Die Glocke project, or the bell. Do you remember hearing about the bell? This was a theoretical device that supposedly used electromagnetic power to propel a bell-shaped craft through time and space. So it falls in line with this sort of study. And the Nazis and the Catholic Church did have a really close relationship during World War II. And in fact, the Catholic Church helped to relocate many Nazi officials after the war.
Well, you'd think if they built it that they would have won the war.
Well, the Chronovisor wasn't created, according to Ernetti, until the 1950s. World War II was over in 1945. So even if it was something that von Braun was working on, which he wouldn't have been, wouldn't have been working on it until after the war, it wouldn't have been done in time. So although including those scientists is suspicious, their skill set does fall in line with a project like this. So, but it is convenient that they're dead and they can't say, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. 3. The device was said to be able to view events in biblical and Roman history. I mentioned that. There's a whole lot of history that isn't biblical or Roman.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me that this Vatican-sponsored device could only view the portions of history that they deemed worthy.
Well, of course.
There have been human beings for hundreds of thousands of years. There's a whole lot of history that I'd like to see. And viewing Christ at the crucifixion would be interesting. I'd really like to watch Moses talking to that bush.
Yeah, or
That's
sea
what I'd be
getting parted, all kinds of stuff, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But then they don't want to do that because if it didn't happen, then it's all wrong.
Well, and also,
It's
again,
a lie.
there's so much. You could spy on the pharaohs. You could watch the Norsemen sailing the Atlantic and landing in Newfoundland. There's so much that you could see that falls outside of biblical and Roman history. So why is it limited to that tiny spectrum?
I don't know.
I don't know if that's everybody's suspicion, but that's definitely one of mine. The play that Father Ernetti transcribed, I put transcribed in quotation marks because according to linguistic experts, some of the Latin phrases that he uses in his transcription weren't in common use until 200 years after the play was supposedly written initially. There's a great deal of speculation that Father Ernetti actually wrote that himself?
Gee, you think?
Imagine. The father claimed to be a scientist, but was an ordained priest in the employ of the Catholic Church. It's therefore thought to be unlikely that he would have taken part in that sort of unbridled scientific experiment. Now, that's a quote that I took from an article on Gaia.com. But I disagree with that because I've personally known priests who were ardent scientists. They didn't see a line between science and creation because science is creation. So that's an argument that certain skeptics used, but I don't agree with that one. I think you can be both.
Yeah.
So
I don't see why not.
I just thought I'd mention it. Father Ernetti couldn't or wouldn't explain exactly how the device worked. He wasn't able to replicate the results for an audience, and he wasn't able to provide any other proof that would conclusively show that this device was created, much less that it worked, although he swore to his dying day that it was factual. Finally, and most damning in my mind, was that back in 1947, science fiction author T.L. Sherrod wrote a novella, and that's a short, it's too long for a short story and too short to be a novel, so it's like a little short book, titled E for Effort. And in his book, he described a device almost identical to the Chronovisor that was able to view past, present, and future. And 1947 was just prior to Father Ernetti saying, "Oh yeah, we made it." So that to me is the most damning piece of evidence that your device was created to mirror the device that was in a work of fiction just 3 years before you got started.
Strange.
It is strange, although, I mean, look back at Star Trek. How many of the things that they showed on the 1969 program do we actually have in common use today?
Quite a few.
Actually, quite a few,
Actually,
yeah.
It's weird.
It wouldn't be the first time that scientists were inspired by works of fiction. It happens all the time. But the Chronovisor would be a very advanced piece of equipment. And that would have come about very quickly. I mean, even with 12 of the brightest minds on the planet, that's a stretch. So if the Chronovisor does exist, it's one of the best kept secrets the Vatican has ever held, as far as we know. For all we know, they've got Mary Magdalene in the basement. I mean, the Vatican, like I said, is very, very good at keeping secrets. For nearly 70 years, they've held it in trust. No one, aside from Father Ernetti and then later Father Brun, spoke of it. Nobody's talked about it. Nobody's leaked anything. But, you know, if it has been dismantled, it could just be that nobody's seen it work in 70 years and the people who did are now gone. So you could argue both ways on that. Honestly, if I had a device like that, I would probably misuse it. I'd be spying on all sorts of things that I probably shouldn't see.
Yeah, you could do all kinds of fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'd spy on people I hated and then use the information against them. I would.
Nah.
Yeah.
There's way better shit to look up than that.
Oh, I don't know.
I guess it depends on how much you hate them.
Well, there are certain orange people who really piss me off. And
yeah.
but that's another story to be told at another time, kids.
Yes, you could go on for months on that one.
But I promised you, no more politics today. I'm done. At least for the moment. But anyway, so there you have it. The Chronovirus, the device that can see into the past, present, and future. If it exists.
If.
If.
You think somebody else would have made it up by now if that was possible?
Maybe, but, you know, have you ever heard of Greek fire?
Yeah.
And nobody's been able to replicate the recipe.
Yeah.
So either the stories are all bunk and they totally lied about their capabilities, although Greek fire was not just reported by the Greeks as a tool they had. It was reported by their enemies as a tool that was used against them. So I tend to believe that it really was a thing and no one's been able to replicate it.
So you never know.
So I lean on the side of the Chronovisor being science fiction. But if it's real, imagine.
You do a lot of stuff with it.
Imagine being able to tune in and see the Battle of Thermopylae, see Mark Antony and Cleopatra. It would be amazing. See what happened at Roswell in 1947. Come on. I want to know. Anywho.
Well, thanks for listening to Weird as Fuck, guys.
You hear that? He's cutting me off. I'm not done yet. No, seriously. Thank you. If you'd like to learn more, check out our website at www.weirdasfck. You know how websites work. Figure it out. weirdasfck.com and navigate over to the blog post, and we'll have all of our sources listed for you so you can check it out for yourself. Until when? The smoke has gotten to my brain, folks. It's all the stuff that was in it. I'm sorry. Anywho, check it out. We will have copies of the images that were purported to be from the Chronovisor and links to all of our sources so that you can investigate and let us know what you think. Until next week, this has been Weird as Fuck and extremely dysfunctional. Maybe that's what we should have named the podcast. Want to stay connected between shows? You can find us on Instagram at WeirdAsFCKPodcast, on Twitter at WeirdAsFuckPod1, on Facebook at WeirdAsFCKPodcast. Send us an email at weirdasfckpodcast@gmail.com, or come on over to our website at www.weirdasfck.com. There you can check out our blog, pick up some merch, look over our sources, and even share your weird experiences. You might even make it on a future episode. We would love to hear from you. Until then, tune in and keep it weird.